That was Randy.
Doing good, thanks.
Good.
Can't believe Christmas is upon us.
Recording in progress.
Maybe give it another minute, see if Andy joins. If not, we can probably get started. Should be a pretty simple meeting tonight.
Okay.
Well, let's go ahead and get started then. And like I said, if he joins us, wonderful. Okay, let me. All right. Just got to find where I've got my agenda hidden here. Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining us today. We will excuse, we know Todd's gone, so, and we'll see on Andy. The first item of business, I guess, is the approval of the agenda. Did everybody have a chance to look that over?
Yep.
Questions, concerns, comments?
It looked pretty straightforward.
Not too much there to question.
No. So we just need a motion to approve tonight's agenda then.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second it.
Okay, Mark approved, Randy seconded. So Mark, if you want to start us on a vote.
Hauser, aye.
Randy?
Meyer, aye.
And Dinsmore, aye. So, okay, thank you. Next item is minutes for October, because we didn't have a November meeting. So again, any questions or comments on those?
No. I'll move
No
to
questions
approve
here.
minutes.
Okay. So a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve again.
Okay, the second.
I'll second that.
Okay, Mark approved, Mark motion, Randy seconded it. So Mark, do you want to start us again on vote?
Hauser, aye.
Randy?
Meyer, aye.
And Dinsmore, aye. Okay. This will go along quite quick if nothing going on. So Rick, turn time over to you for item number 3, regular business and reports.
Yeah, it's like I said, it should be a pretty quiet, fairly easy meeting, mostly just report items for the past months. Obviously, I'm sure everybody knew about the election, so we'll have a new mayor and probably 3 new council come January. So we're looking forward to working with them. Work with the new developments continues. As you know, there's just stuff going on all over in the city and in our service territory. The new Green Springs development, which is between the new Washington Parkway and the Habitat boundary, the PCD, the Planned Community Development Agreement, was approved by the council in November. So I think there will be moving full steam ahead on that project, which is
Is that the hospital piece?
no, that's north of the hospital. So that'll mostly be residential. There's like 2,200 units, and they'll have some commercial and some resort components in that development. So
Below the water tower and next to the substation, that kind of that flat area.
it actually goes all the way from a little bit north of the substation all the way over to exit 13. It's at, I think it's 520 acres. Is that right, Jeremy? There's a bigger than that, 720.
Sorry, it's 650, 520 developable acres. The rest will be open space. Basically everything from Brio all the way to exit 13 north of Washington Parkway.
Yeah, so it's a very large development, and we've had lots of meetings with staff, and they have a lot of exciting things coming in there. So kind of coordinated with that is Jeremy and Thad have been working with Sitla on getting us a substation site near exit 13 that will help support that development, as well as the hospital are the primary drivers of that site. So they're working on that and making progress there. One other project that will be coming before too long is there's a new Main Street interchange that will be being done by UDOT. We actually met with a couple of their engineers this afternoon to see how it would impact our substation right there on Main Street in Buena Vista and the transmission line. The good news is so far they're in preliminary layout mode. It's not as bad as I had feared. There will be some impacts, and we're going to have to relocate some lines and potentially some switchgear, but they avoided the two bigger poles, which would be a much more difficult thing to deal with. So that'll just be an ongoing thing as more detail becomes available. The October peak, remember our July peak was just under 52 megawatts. Our October peak was down to 26.2 megawatts, and November was 15.9. So you can see how quickly our load drops off as the temperatures come down. Interestingly enough, the wholesale pricing has not come down this fall as much as it typically has for this time of year. This time of year, we actually have enough resources generally within a megawatt to cover, so we're not in that market a lot, but it has been interesting to note that the prices have kind of stayed a little bit higher than we typically see this time of year. As far as projects, the crews have been focusing on smaller projects, maintenance, replacing rusted equipment, and those kind of things. Actually, let me share my screen. I got a couple things. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Actually, let me go back to this one. This was a pole that was on 200 East, just a little across from the first stop. It was a lineman from St. George that noticed this pole was leaning unusually, and we went out and checked it, and sure enough, the pole had failed here at the ground line, and you can see it's just been rotting, and so we had to put it back in the same hole that it came out of. And so these are just a few pictures. Wasn't much left of the butt of that pole. And that's them putting the new pole in place and then dropping it in the hole that the old one came out of. So a lot of things, we've had quite a few projects. This one was more of an emergency, but a lot have been replacing similar type poles. And and things like that. We've moved our pole storage yard to a different area of the parks yard to make room for a new parks building that they'll be building up there in their yard soon. Report, since we haven't had meetings since October, the impact fee, the impact fee facilities plan, and the rate studies that you all recommended for approval at your October meeting were approved by the council on October 13th. So those new impact fees will, there's a 90-day waiting period, and so they actually will start on January 13th. One other area that's been interesting to note this year, we've had a significant increase in solar applications. We've had 15 in October, 26 in November, and 4 so far this December. So since July, where our fiscal year starts, we've had 61 applications in just over 5 months. And in all of fiscal year 2021, for those 12 months, we only had 58. So we've already exceeded in less than 6 months what we did the previous year. And one of the interesting challenges that may come up there is the meters that we use for those installations. We've had on order since May, and we're actually down to about 5 to 10 meters available. So at some point we may have to talk to those people and see how they want to proceed, because we physically can't get the meters, the meter at both directions. So they could go ahead and put their system on and it would offset their load, but we wouldn't be able to measure how much comes back to our system. So they keep telling us they'll be here. Our current order is supposed to be here on December 21st, I think, but we've heard that for the last several months. So
Is it something that's easy to do down the road?
oh yeah, well, it's
When
just
they
a
do-
matter of swapping the meter out. It's just that your standard meter won't measure both directions.
Right.
So it's not a hard thing to change out. It's just that we physically don't have, we're approaching running out of the meters. We need to do that. There's obviously an installation lag between now when we get the application and when it gets installed. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that the meters will come in.
Okay.
Few other things. We had IPSA the first week in November. This was over at the Sun Bowl. Their kind of opening ceremonies. We had 3 of our linemen attend and participate it's basically a week-long event. And all these poles that St. George has set inside the Sun Bowl, they use them for different competitions, pole changeouts, cross-arm changeouts, and different things. So it's just kind of a cool flag ceremony they did at the start of that. And it had lots of positive comments from the linemen that attended from our department. We had a couple outages or trips, and they were short outages. If you look really close, hopefully you can see my cursor right here. There's this lead that should be connected to this arrestor. And we had some reports of some trips on this circuit, and what it would do is it would trip, wait a couple seconds and reclose, which is what it's supposed to do, and then it would hold. So we did some investigation on the circuit. This is up just a little north of the Parkway substation. And these aren't rocks, these are bird feathers. So the doves would, I don't know if they were migrating through but there were a lot of doves hanging out on the line and on that structure. And so we've since replaced the arrestor there. And we call it critter guard. We use some insulated wire over to the arrestor and a little cap that goes on top of these to help prevent that. But that was an interesting one. And then we also had another one cycle on the north commercial area. And Jake went out and actually found a Mylar balloon that had got up into the line, and it does kind of the same thing. It does a quick fault, and then the circuit opens, the arc goes away, and then it closes back in and holds. So those were short outages, but nonetheless, those kind of things do happen. Okay, other activities in the last couple months, we've had all of our hot sticks, rubber goods. They have to be tested each year, so that was completed. One highlight to a report is Jordan Jolly, our apprentice. He passed his first year apprentice test, so now he's a second year. Passed them both written and practical with flying colors. So congratulations to Jordan on that. The crew put up the Christmas tree in the park by the city office, the Veterans Park, and then hung the banners and snowflakes and wreaths on Telegraph. So when you get a chance, go up and drive through there, which was kind of interesting. I'm glad we got the tree up when we did, because the Friday after that, we had most of our crew come down with COVID. So we had a period of a week and a half to almost 2 weeks that they were out with that. But I'm glad to report they're all back at work and doing well. A little fatigued at times, but they are doing well. So Jake, we have a battery tester that tests the condition of the batteries that we share with other utilities and UAMPs, and he's tested all of our battery banks, and they all look good. Another thing, as we move into kind of the UAMP side of things, I asked Jake to look at, there's this curve here, and we call it a load duration curve. And what it is it takes every hour's peak load level and sorts them from high to low. And so it gives us an idea how many hours we're above a given load level, because we're trying to work on getting position ourselves for the resources for this upcoming summer. And one of the interesting things to note on this is, I mentioned our peak over this last July was 52 megawatts. And so I wanted him to kind of find out how many hours above 40 megawatts we are. And it's only 133 hours that we're above that 40 mark. And so this area here is where it becomes a challenge to find resources for that, because we don't need them a lot of hours. And so to buy a resource or to build generation, they're using them very little over the year. So what's that? 20% of our peak load we're only above that level for 130 hours. So, and that's where the market and the pool comes into play, is we typically buy these higher hours on that open market because of the cost to do it. And then you see the next 10 megawatts down between 30 and 40, what would that be? About
300 hours.
Yeah, 350 hours, somewhere around there. So, the easiest load to serve would be a nice flat one that's the same load 24/7, but that doesn't happen. So, we're trying to target somewhere between 30 to 40 megawatts to have resources available for this upcoming summer. But I thought that was an interesting a graph of this last year of what we're seeing there. So that's kind of a quick summary on what has been going on in the department the last couple months. Again, we lost a couple of weeks. We were kind of just doing minimum things because we had so many people out at one time, but fortunately we didn't have any significant incidents or failures of poles or transformers, so we made it through pretty good. And we can always call on adjacent utilities if we would have gotten to a bind. So any questions on that? Or on upcoming projects, the next big one that will start next week is Cactus Lane. We'll be rebuilding that line. We're reusing the conductor, but the poles and cross arms will all be replaced. So you'll see the crews if you're up in that area on Cactus Lane. There's about 11 poles, but they're all a bit of a challenge because they'll do it with some of the wires still hot, energized. So it just takes a lot of time, and there's a lot of buried communication cables in the area. So they got to find those and make sure they're not drilling through those. So any questions on kind of our local system before I move on to UAMPS?
No, thank you. Sounds very good.
Okay. For UAMPS, probably one of the biggest things that's been discussed over the last couple of months is last summer we had kind of a historically when they buy resources, you do it day ahead or real time, almost hourly of the day of. Historically, day ahead was cheaper and the real time was a higher priced resource. This last summer, because of some of the requirements that CAISO, which is the California regional entity that oversees it, they required their people to be cover their resources the day ahead. And so what that had the effect of doing is driving the day ahead pricing up. And then when the day happened, they didn't need all of it, so they would dump it in the market pretty cheap. And what that did to UAMPS is basically made them kind of upside down, is you'd end up having to buy high and sell low. And so they've made some changes that all the UAMPS members are going to have to be covered the day ahead, which will reduce some of the challenges that UAMPS had over this last summer. UAMPS schedules for us, so it doesn't have a ton of direct effect other than, it could potentially have effect on the bottom line. And so I think they've got it addressed. Jeremy and Jake and Mike attended a kind of a regional meeting UAMPS had on the changes last week. I don't know, Jeremy, is there anything you want to say on that?
No, I don't really have anything to add. I think they've done a good job addressing the issue and they have a good plan moving forward. So I think I want to give them credit for that. It's a tough situation. They've done a good job of mitigating.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I was off playing with Mickey Mouse last week, so with some grandkids. So they took care of that meeting for me, and I appreciate that. And UAMPS is monitoring that and making sure there's no. It will have the effect of keeping everybody on the same financial plane and opportunities. So I'll just go through some of the UAMPS projects. The Central St. George project, which is our local transmission project. The transformer RAS scheme, Rocky Mountains indicated as of last week, it was still on schedule to be in place for May. And that really only comes into play if the main transformers feeding the county have a problem. So it's good they've got that on track. We are working with the other local utilities. If that RAS scheme, it stands for Remedial Action Scheme. If that were to operate, means we'd have limited capacity to the county, so all the utilities would have to shed some load and kind of proportionately share the capacity available. And so we're working on ways the system would operate quickly to get the load under that. Not all utilities would shed initially. And so we have to have a plan to make that fair amongst the utilities. And so that's an ongoing work that we're working on. On the Nebo project, which is the natural gas plant there in Payson, they completed their 6-week outage, which started the first week in October and went to the second week in November. The good news is they made it through that. They replaced basically the whole control system of the plant, which is 15 years old, and in computer years that's pretty ancient. The good news is it's back online now and seems to be running really well. And they did other maintenance while they had it down as well, but that was the primary focus, was the control system. And right now it's running approximately 16 hours a day, depending on market pricing versus what they can run the plant for. So that's good to have it back. The Vail plant, the waste heat plant, the generator is back. And I've been watching, and they've been testing it, but it hasn't consistently stayed online. I'm not sure all the reasons. I'll find out next week at the UAMPS meetings, but it should return to normal operation here shortly. On the political side of things, our government and public affairs project, you're probably aware the bipartisan infrastructure plan was approved by the Senate, the House, and signed by Biden. We'll still kind of keep an eye on. I don't think in that plan there's a lot of opportunities for the city, but UAMPS is evaluating the language of that. I can't remember. I think it was like 1,000 pages long. It was some really long document. The next package, the Build Back Better bill, passed the House, and it's waiting through the Senate. Not quite sure what will come out of that and how that'll affect us. I think at the October meeting, I'd reported that initially that plan had requirements that you had to have, they called it the Clean Electricity Performance Program, where each year you had to increase your non-carbon resources by 4%. This current plan, that has been taken out. And so how they're dealing with climate provisions or grant programs, energy efficient programs, solar rebates, electric vehicle, financial support, and also transmission line development and support. And so again, when the final language of that comes out, we'll have to see what opportunities that we might have to participate and get some of that funding. So far, there's still good support in the House and Senate for the nuclear plant, the SMR that we're working with. We'll talk about more of that later. And then one of the other areas of concern is the drought in the West and the hydro production. Lake Powell, where do I have that? I'll report on that on the CRISP a little later, but that's a hot topic, as I'm sure you've all seen. New resources coming up. Our Red Mesa Solar Project was originally scheduled to come online in July of 2022. Due to supply chain issues, they're claiming a force majeure, and it'll probably be September of 2022 before that comes on. The steel solar project has always been scheduled for December of 2022, basically a year from now. And currently, they're still reporting that that project's still on track. One of the projects that will bring back to the power board and the city council for a vote is all the pieces come together is the Enchant project in New Mexico. It's this old San Juan plant that a group is going to buy that from the current owners and then eventually put carbon capture on that plant. Will be one of the first of that scale in the country. And the first couple of years, it'll be operated just as a standard coal plant. And we hope to get 4 megawatts this upcoming summer from that plant. And the price is really good right now. It's in the low to mid 30s, which would be a great resource for us. So, and UAMPS hopes to have the final draft of the power purchase agreement at next week's meetings. And if it gets approved there, then we'd bring it back to the governing bodies in January, February timeframe, depending on how all that pans out for approval. So that's another interesting technology. They made a presentation at last month's meetings, and their plan is they are basically going to take the carbon, capture it, and stick it in salt caverns in the area down there by the plant. So 2 of our other solar projects that we had at least looked into, there was one in New Mexico and one adjacent to our steel solar project. Both of those are on hold right now due to lack of subscription. One of the other resources that we've talked about is the Muddy Creek Heat Recovery Project, and it would be the same basic technology as VAO, but it'll be up in Wyoming, and a plant about twice the size of what VAO is. And UAMPS is working on finalizing the agreements with the landowner and the host agreement with Kern River Pipeline. So, and then once they get through those agreements, they'll do a EPC for construction of the plant. And then, of course, through all this process, we'll get a final cost and then make a decision whether to proceed as part of that project. So, and for this upcoming summer, hopefully, like I say, the Enchant will be there for us. Our new 5-year contract starts in April. And so during the summer, we have more than what we've had in the old 5-year contract. And then we will probably still look for a summer purchase somewhat similar to what we've done in the past, maybe not quite as large. May depend on the pricing we see on that. So we're already starting to plan for next year's peak load. For the federal hydropower, we only get about a 0.5 megawatt, and so it doesn't impact us tremendously. But because of the drought, Lake Powell is down to 29% full, and there's still speculation if it can continue as it has been going, it could hit a no power output level in 2023. So hopefully we have a good wet water year and can replenish some of our reservoirs for drinking water as well as hydropower. Because hydro, even though we don't get a direct out, a large allocation, by having it available, it helps keep prices down. So if that resource, hydro resources availability goes down, it tends to drive the prices up, and that's where it affects us. The last couple months actually have been pretty good for wind. Horse Butte last month had a capacity factor of 41%. So that's actually the highest it's been for quite a while. And of course, it follows the storms in Idaho and Wyoming. And Pleasant Valley was at 21% capacity factor. And last but not least, I'm gonna have you guys been receiving these monthly reports on the carbon-free project? Does this look familiar at all to you?
Yes.
Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to look at it, but this is the published version, if you will. A lot of the things we talk about on the carbon-free project are in executive session, so they publish this once a month so we can brief power boards and councils on what's going on. So I'm glad to hear that you've been getting this. Sometimes I'm not sure what's going to who from you apps when I get it. So just a quick update. NewScale's working on the standard plant design. It's on schedule to work through with the NRC. They've also branded these plants now as Voyagers. So ours is going to be a Voyager 6 because it has 6 units. And then they're also marketing, I think it's a Voyager 4 and a Voyager 12, which would have 4 or 12 units. So sounds kind of futuristic, so that sounds good. They're working on the class 3 cost estimates and COLA development and beginning some of the engineering that will help or that's required for the COLA, which is the application that we'll submit to the NRC. And the class 3 estimate, a top line basically shows the accuracy or typical accuracy of that. Right now we're at a class 4, so it's a wider band. And so they just put better inputs into it, getting more detail in the design, and NewScale and Fluor are heavily involved with that. And we're expecting that class 3 estimate to be next summer in August of 2022. One of the main things on this is that middle bullet point is INL has been having projects on the site as well. And so they've been good to work back and forth on both the seismic and the cultural and biological data and for environmental requirements that we have to do. So that's been helpful to the project. And then their target to submit to the NRC is January of 24. The site work that's been going on is primarily core borings for seismic and structural analysis, for the design of the plant. Apparently they had a COVID case and followed all the protocols. The core boring was actually ahead of schedule, which is great. And the monitoring wells were a little behind schedule, but they should be done as we speak. This report would have been as of mid-November, and their only concern was the weather, which I don't think there's been any significant storms in Idaho that would have slowed them down much. So until I think this week, so hopefully they're done with that. So basically, probably within this week or next week, they'll start demobbing from the site because they'll have those core. That was the main work they were trying to get done this fall. And they've made arrangements. It's interesting, they were telling us that the cores that they take have to be stored in controlled conditions for basically the life of the project. And so they've worked with INL of being able to store those core samples on site up there at the bigger site. And this shack, they call it, is the seismic hazard analysis. And they've again been working with INL on other projects that they have, which the NRC has approved doing it that way, and it keeps the project schedule and actually saves the project some money. So, and I'm not overly familiar with what the volcanic hazard analysis is. Again, they look at the site every which way possible and study it to make sure it's going to be safe. This is probably one of the bigger areas of question at this point. Is they're working to select an actual operator. And why that's important is working with them. If we have one selected, then we can pin down the operation and maintenance costs anticipated for the plant. And they hope to have that someone on board within the next probably first quarter of 2022. And again, that dovetails into the cost estimate that will come out in the summer. And that's just kind of a synopsis of what was on the other slides. As far as subscription, and I know this is one of the important things, Grant County is the big one. I think when they come in, we'll see several follow really quick. In talking to Doug Hunter of UAMPS, Grant's very comfortable with the project. Right now, their remaining challenge is getting transmission rights to and from, or from the project to them. And there's several different methods they're looking at as far as participating in a transmission line, an exchange of output from one area to the other. So he didn't see it being an insurmountable obstacle. But Grant was working on the transmission side and not necessarily concerned with the plant or the project itself. It's just getting the power from Idaho to Washington, where they're located. So, and again, I think there's Clark is one, and some of the other utilities that have signed the LOIs are watching Grant, and because they're in the similar area, so they'll have similar issues. So I think they're letting them kind of plow that forward. And I think that's it. If Grant comes in and these other utilities that actually have more subscription than's available, which would be a great problem to have for a change. So that's really my UAMPS report. Do you have any questions on any of that? Say it should be kind of a quick and easy meeting.
I really like that graph showing how much and when the power was getting used, that hourly.
Yeah, it really kind of helps you visualize, the spiky nature, if you will, or, it's just driven by those really hot days, and there's only so many hours that we're above that level. So it does help with our planning quite a bit.
Are you going to the meeting? I think it's next week, isn't it?
Yes. Next week is UAMP's annual meeting up in Salt Lake at the Marriott. So yeah, I will be there.
Oh, I'm going to.
Okay. And I think Jeremy is as well. And I think those are the ones we've heard back from. So
You say you will or will not be there, Rick?
I will be there.
Will be, okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
As long as avoid any of the bugs that are going around.
Yep. So any other questions, comments?
I think that's it.
Okay, well,
I'll motion to adjourn.
wait, give me 1 sec. So our next meeting is what, January
It will be what, the
4th?
4th? Yes.
Okay, so January 4th will be our next meeting. So hopefully we'll have everybody come back again and be back to join us again. Everyone have a Merry Christmas. Enjoy the holidays and being around family. And Randy gave us a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Mark second. So Randy, we want to start the vote?
Meyer, aye.
Mark?
Hauser, aye.
Dinsmore, aye. So thank you
Gentlemen.
all.
Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate
Merry
your.
Christmas, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Take care.